We're going to talk about time periods of Greek Jewry, some maps, and then the differences of the three subcultures of Greek Jewry. In terms of time periods, we have the classical period from 315 BCE until the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. In other words, that's Hellenistic Jewry. We have the Byzantine period starting in 315, which lasted until about 1423. And then in various parts of Greece, we had Venetian rule. You had Venetian rule for a short time in Salonika from 1423 to 1430. You had Venetian rule in Crete from 1205 to 1666. And then in the Ionian Islands, in the west of Greece, in Jewish communities like Corfu, Cephalonia, and Zakynthos or Zante. And Zakynthos was 1495 to 1797, which is pretty late. Then you have the Ottoman period in Salonika from 1430 to 1912. And then in Greece, you have the modern period. First, you have the Greek Revolution, which began in 1821. You had the Peloponnese communities destroyed, and some in Attica, which is, let's say, the mainland. There was only Athens and Chalkis who were part of Greece in that early period. In 1881, the Ottomans were defeated in the middle of Greece in a region called Thessaly. In 1912, Greece took over the Ottoman Empire in the north, in the far west in Epirus, in the middle in Macedonia, and to the east in Thrace. So you had islands also that changed rule at varying times. Crete finally became Greek in 1910. It was Ottoman previously. The island of Rhodes, for example, was Ottoman, but it became Italian in 1911. And then the Nazis took over in 1943, and it only became Greece in 1946. Okay, going from west to east, not in chronological order. So you have the Judeo-Italian culture in Corfu, Zakynthos, Kefalonia, etc., etc. And they had a Judeo-Italian dialect, which was essentially a Venetian dialect, because the Venetians were the rulers. So that when you have migrations away from Corfu, already in the 1840s, you had Corfian Jews, because they were fabric merchants, who established themselves in Manchester. Then you had a very big blood libel in 1891 in Corfu, and from there, Jews, about a third of the community, about a third of 4,000 people, relocated either in Trieste or in Alexandria, Egypt. In the western part of Greece, on the mainland, you had the Romaniote Jews in Epirus. The major communities were Ioannina, Arta, and as I mentioned previously, Preveza. Ioannina was a big Torah community. It had its own folklore, its own particularistic Jewish culture and civilization. Many rabbis, many unusual customs, many unusual forms of ornamentation. They started migrating to the United States in the first decade of the 20th century. And then in the 30s, during the World Depression, they migrated to Athens. In Athens, half the community was Sephardic and half was Romaniote. And then most of the Jews who remained in Ioannina, about 1,800, were killed in the Holocaust. So then the other culture, the dominant culture, was the Sephardic culture. When the expulsees, with all their great rabbis like Medina and Adarbi and Yosef Karo came, they basically took over the Romaniote culture. They became the halachic Jewish law decision makers, and what was Machzor Romania, this Judeo-Greek Byzantine prayer style, was replaced by the Sephardic prayer style, except that there were some religious poems that they continued to write in Judeo-Greek, in Hebrew letters, but in this dialect from Epirus, western Greece. There was a small community called Chalkis, which was Romaniote, northeast of Athens, which has a history of maybe 1,300 years. But the Sephardic communities, aside from Salonika, this big community, there were many other small communities, not just Rhodes, but let's say Castoria, Xeris, Xanthi, Komotini, Kavala, all the way to the Turkish border. So these were small Sephardic communities, but they were very active. They were very Sephardic culturally. They all like for every two Jews, there's 3 organizations. They all had many. They had Bikur Cholim. They had Matan Beseter. They had their burial societies. They had many organizations. Maybe they only had 1 rabbi. Maybe the kids only went to school for 6 grades. Then afterwards, they were either artisans or peddlers or merchants. And the Sephardic Jews, though, because of the events in Salonika, started migrating from the region already at the beginning of the 20th century. They didn't want to be in the Greek army. The Ottoman Empire was dismembering. So the Salonican Jews also went to New York and to places like Raritan in New Jersey. They had 3,000 members in the Sephardic Brotherhood Burial Society in New York. In the 30s, the Salonican Jews had a big enclave in Paris. The rich Jews lived in the 16th arrondissement. The middle class, with their synagogues, lived in the 9th district by the Opera. And the poorer Jews lived in the 11th district by Voltaire. There was a synagogue called Abravanel, which was seriously damaged in the past years. That was the Salonican synagogue of poorer Jews. Salonican Jews also had enclaves in Lyon and Marseille. In Palestine in the 30s, they were 15 to 18,000 Jews. They were the largest groups after the German Jews. Most of them died in the Holocaust. The Greek Jews had 4 moshavim in Israel. They lived on 1 or 2 kibbutzim. But for the most part, they weren't socialist Zionists. There was a large socialist movement in Greece, so Zionists were in a big minority. There were religious Mizrahi Zionists and Cherut revisionist Zionists. But so it's spread out, and basically because modernization, the whole rabbinic culture of Salonican Jewry basically wore down. And with the Holocaust, the whole rabbinic culture and active Sephardic culture, including theater, literature, music, etc., was eradicated.